Guys, it seemed like that first video where I went through my first three shelves was pretty popular, and I've really enjoyed doing it. So let's not beat around the bush. We finished in the late 90s for Spider-Man, so let's just keep on going. So here we go, folks, swooping in from the 90s to the 2000s. And I've got to admit, there's a bit of a time skip here, with a bit of a mind flip. A little Rocky Horror Show for you. Yeah, so the early 2000s were not a good time for Spider-Man. Post-Clone Saga, it was all a bit rough. We had, like Chapter 1 and the John Byrne reboot, and it was just early 2000s Spider-Man was a mess. They tried to kill off Mary Jane and bring her back, and was he single? Was he not? So not much happened. It was a dark time for Spider-Man. And then we got the JMS run with the J. Scott Campbell covers and John Romita Jr. on art, and things picked up again. But there is a bit of a leap. We have to really get to the sort of mid 2000s when things start to really take shape again. And Spider-Man teams up with Iron Man, and we get the Iron Spider, which is missing. There's no Hasbro Legends Iron Spider, which is ridiculous. So instead, the Spider-Man who represents this era is House of M Spider-Man, which is a little bit dubious since, it's only a miniseries really. But at the same time, he is the only Spider-Man that's unique to this particular era. Not a particularly exciting figure, but he will do for this time until Hasbro finally give us a decent Marvel Legends Iron Spider. Come on, that's such an easy one to do. I don't know why we haven't got that yet. But the rest of the collection starts to fill itself out quite nicely because we've got the Dark Avengers / Thunderbolts. There's a lot going on here with these guys. And then I also incorporate the Flash Thompson Venom as well. So, there's a lot to unpack here. First of all, we got the Electro, which is a bit of a random choice, you might say, but he does kind of belong in this era with this design. I think this is he appeared like this a few times, especially in the Marvel Knights Spider-Man run. That was kind of a fun one, and he's kind of an interesting fleshed out character a bit more. Really, he and Matt Gargan featured a lot in that storyline. I kind of liked that they sort of broached subjects on Max Dillon's sexuality as well. I think he was mentioning in a conversation with another character that he was meeting this lady of the night who was a mutant who could shapeshift, and he said that he had certain sort of interests with regards to gender identity that she could appeal to, and I was like, that's kind of cool. I like that. It's interesting. Also, speaking of Marvel Knights and more sort of interesting, risque storylines, we had an interesting one with the Absorbing Man, where some drug dealers tricked him into turning his body into cocaine, which they then cut up and sold as Absorbing Man cocaine, and he had to reconstitute himself. That was an interesting time. So, of course, the centerpiece for this kind of collection is the Monster Venom, which I spent quite a lot of money on the secondhand market trying to put together, but he's so worth it, though. I love much better than the Monster Venom is the mouth paint job. We've got the darker sort of bone-coloured teeth, and it's much more interesting. There's so much more going on there. I just love the dynamic pose. I think that's absolutely terrific. And the whole Thunderbolts storyline with him and Osborn, the dynamic between them with Osborn kind of keeping him on the leash. It was just so well put together. Loved Thunderbolts, loved Dark Avengers, loved that whole Dark Reign storyline. I felt like things were getting a bit sort of stagnant. I didn't really like the status quo of Civil War and Secret Invasion. I'm not a big Bendis fan, but Dark Reign I thought just so good. So we've got vintage costume Wolverine here with a claw removed from each hand so that he's kind of doubling as Daken there. Just need some terrible tribal tattoos. And we've got the other version of Matt Gargan's Venom for the Dark Avengers, which is just black costume Spider-Man. I like the little kit bash here because I found that the Toy Biz Iron Patriot, which is the only Iron Patriot we have, is a little bit too small, I feel. But when he's got the helmet in his hand and then the retro wave Norman Osborn head, I feel that kind of works. I think that looks pretty good. Now, this is a character that I've been looking to upgrade and update, which I will be able to do pretty soon. So we've got the, not Clint Barton Hawkeye, but the Bullseye version of Hawkeye. And I do have Bullseye on the way. I've managed to secure him finally, so I can put the lovely bald Bullseye head on there, and that's going to look fantastic. Sentry is a character I find absolutely fascinating. Love the story of Sentry. How he's ludicrously powerful and completely, hamstrung by his mental difficulties, and this battle with the void inside, I think, is just so well put together. His run and story at the end of the Siege storyline, that was terrific. Speaking of his run with Siege, we have Ares, who's a character I don't know a huge amount about. I read his miniseries in the mid-2000s, but he's a fun character, gets torn in half. It happens. Being an Asgardian god, I guess he has probably come back. I'm pretty certain he has come back. So that's predominantly the Dark Avengers Thunderbolts. But of course, we have one of my favorite more modern stories, which is Agent Venom. Flash Thompson as Agent Venom was such a creative direction to take Venom in. I felt Venom had got really stagnated as Matt Gargan's Venom. I never liked the sort of overly monstrous design of Venom. I felt like he looked cool, but they'd lost who Venom was as a character. Oh, that's just my little laptop telling me I should be studying now, but this is more important. Flash Thompson's Venom I thought was terrific, and I think we could do with an updated version of this figure, but having said that, it's very nice. I love all the detail on it. And the run of Agent Venom was so good. It was so dark. They had a lot of stuff going on there, which mainly involved as well, of course, Jack-o'-lantern. And I dig Jack-o'-lantern. Anything that's Halloween-y, I'm a big mark for Halloween. So anything that's pumpkins and pumpkin spice latte. Oof, he should have one of those in his hands. That would just, there should have been an extra accessory for Jack-o'-lantern. But yeah, I love this character, and I love how dark the storylines got with him in Agent Venom. Even though Flash had the symbiote, he was massively overpowered in so many fights, and it was a real kind of underdog story, so I really dug that. Now, we're kind of jumping ahead, actually, because we have Anti-Venom. And Anti-Venom, again, he's part of the sort of brand new day sort of era of Spider-Man. Much maligned, but I loved the design of the character, and it kind of rehabbed Eddie Brock a little bit once they decided to give him cancer and try to write him out the storylines. What this really needs now is a Mr. Negative figure to go with him. But yeah, I dig Anti-Venom, which then of course later went on to become the new Toxin, which this figure doesn't really capture at all. He doesn't capture the old Toxin, which was, with the black legs and then the red on top. This is kind of a bit of a dodgy repaint, to be honest. He's got his weird, hamster teeth. Not good. If only Hasbro were going to do a giant monster redo of him. Oh, wait, they are, and it looks incredible. So soon, Monster Venom's going to be sharing the spotlight with the new Toxin that's coming out, and I cannot wait to add that. So, I've waxed lyrical on the sort of the new generation of Spider-Man, so to speak. So let's go on down. We're going to get a lot more modern now. We're sort of in the 2010s, 20-teens here. So here we go with what I think I sort of mainly associate as big time / superior Spider-Man. So of course I love the big time costume. If you've seen some of my top 5 countdowns and stuff, big time features on there, because again, it's just the juxtaposition of the green and black, the neon, I just think looks so cool. And it's a fun costume. It's one of those sort of game breaking costumes, because really why didn't Peter just keep hold of it? Or when Kane stole it, why didn't he just make a new one? Because it just does everything. But you don't want Spider-Man to do everything. It kind of, makes the character too powerful. Now let's, my chronology of what happens in Spider-Man gets a little spotty in the 2000s because there's just so much going on. So I'll try and tackle it one character at a time rather than the actual order that these things occur. So of course we have, from the more recent wave, from the Gamerverse. See, it's listed or it's considered Gamerverse, but really anyone who knows Spider-Man knows that this is from the Ends of the Earth storyline. This is the armored Spider-Man costume when he took on the Sinister Six and one of Dr. Octopus's like final last hurrahs before popping his clogs. And again, this is a figure like I really like it just because it's so different. There's like lots of unique sculpting on here. Yeah, I'm a big fan of this guy. Speaking of Doc Ock, there's no chronology here at all. When we're in the Superior run and he gets a hold of the Venom symbiote, or more to the point, the Venom symbiote gets a hold of him, we have Superior Venom, which I loved the storyline because he could use the symbiote to justify or explain away his uncharacteristic behavior. So people were getting suspicious that Peter wasn't Peter, and he was also, and then when the symbiote attached to him, he was like, "Oh no, it was a symbiote. That's why I was acting strange." And like the head sculpt isn't that sort of interesting because there's not much sculpting. It's more of just like a paint job. But in fairness, that's also very much how it was drawn. So I'll give you that. Deadpool, DP here, I've got a review of him from a much earlier video I did. I do like this figure, and Deadpool's a funny one to try and like sort of get a chronology for when to put him in, because obviously he is created in the early 90s, but I figure he features more prominently in Spider-Man around this time. This is where we got the Spider-Man Deadpool team-up comic book. So I figured this was a good sort of place to put old DP in. Speaking of Deadpool, this is a figure, symbiote Deadpool, that I'm kind of torn about because is he actually in Marvel continuity? Like it is definite, like that is a thing that happened where he got the symbiote back in like the 80s. So technically he should be in the 80s, but this story wasn't told and the character wasn't designed until modern times. So he's kind of a man out of time, and I don't really know where to put him, but I want to have him for the symbiote collection, so there you go. Symbiote Deadpool goes here, for better or for worse. And since she's in shot, we have the more modern, big-time Black Cat, and I like this design. I think this is a very nice, again, look at the face, as opposed to the other one from the 90s. It's actually a smile, there's some expression here, which makes such a huge difference to the figure. And I love the design of the new costume with the cat's eyes there as well. I think that works really well. Just below her, we have Kraven, the resurrected Kraven, which I enjoyed the storyline when they resurrected him, mainly because it brought back Kane, and I was like, oh yes, finally my favorite character is back. And then they killed him at the end. So I was very annoyed, but he resurrected with the powers of the other, which was a huge bonus. So I was very happy. And now Kane definitely has pride of place in the collection here. Love the character, love the figure. Still don't quite get why he's Peter Parker size, but hey, there you go. Now also, I should wiki when he was actually created, but of course we have Miles Morales as well. And Miles, I mean, he's definitely 2000s as opposed to 90s. But maybe he's more early 2000s as opposed to 2010s, 20-teens. But either way, I don't want to have all the Spider-Verse figures together because otherwise it just becomes a big hodgepodge of red and blue. So yeah, Miles gets to join this cast here. And again, I like it when the masked characters have their maskless faces because then you can have both on display at the same time if you're like that. Superior Spider-Man, who we've touched upon, is Doc Ock in Peter Parker's body. Very disappointing figure. Where are the legs? Where are his proper web shooters? I'm using the gauntlet sort of cuffs that came with the new Deadpool, Daredevil. The armored Daredevil has these, and you can either have him with or without. So I chose to have him without so that they can go to Superior. So at least it breaks up the figure and just makes it a bit more interesting. Now, of course, around this time, we had the introduction of the superior foes of Spider-Man. So, we have Speed Demon with Silvermane. Silvermane is a fun, ridiculous accessory. It kind of just nonsense, but yeah, he's goofy and fun. And the Speed Demon character, I really like the design, again, because it's flashy. Like, literally with the flashing thunderbolts look on there. And, you know, bright, shiny. I dig that. White Rabbit wasn't a member of the superior foes, but she's kind of of that sort of C-list, D-list villain group. But I always saw her as like a Harley Quinn type character for Spider-Man, and I really dig it. I mean, I love anything Lewis Carroll, kind of Alice in Wonderland themed. So yeah, I love that. And I love the figure as well. One thing I don't like is that they have her umbrella like with a firing, blasting effect, which is like, look at her face. Does she look like she's attacking anyone? It doesn't really work. In the back, we got Peter Parker's current roommate, Boomerang. Again, not the most exciting figure, but he's fine. And way in the back, we have Beetle, the female Beetle, who is a character who's relatively new. Oh gosh, look at that. You see how delicate these little buggers are. I'm gonna try and fly close to the sun and fix this while filming. Oh, it's so tense. There you go. Whew. So yeah, I really like her scumbag lawyer character. That's a lot of fun. Flew too close to the sun. I warned you. Oh, break it up, lads. Now is not the time. I'm trying to film a video here. Okay, so we have Carnage, Carnage just, since he debuted in the 90s, he's always around, whatever the time frame is. So this was the Ultimate Green Goblin body with the newer Cletus head, which I think works really well. I splattered some black paint on the hands as well to make it a bit more dynamic. I kind of like this, but what I want to do is get the Lex Luthor prison jumpsuit from the Batman versus Superman wave and stick the Cletus head on that. I've seen people do that, and that looks really cool. So this era also was a time when we got the Red Hulk, the debut of the Red Hulk, and I love this figure, and I finally got the extra fire effects to really make him pop. So yeah, I'm a big fan of the Red Hulk figure. Why? Because it's big and chunky and just looks kind of badass. I'm so down with that. And speaking of cool designs, the newer Spider-Man 2099, and again, we're sort of skipping forward a bit. We're more sort of in the 20-teens now, or the late 20-teens. I don't have the classic blue and red Spider-Man 2099 costume, which I'm really hoping they're going to do a re-release of, because I do love that design. But it's just quite expensive at the moment, and I feel he's probably not worth the money. So yeah, we've got the more modern one. I really didn't care for the more recent story, not story arc, but actual series, the 2099 series that he was in. I didn't think it was very well written. But the design still looks kind of cool. Not as good as the original, but fun. And also, speaking of fun designs, we had the Phil Urich Hobgoblin. And I love the Phil Urich character. I mean, I first was introduced to him in the 90s when he took on the role of Green Goblin, when he found one of the old stashes of Goblin gear. That's such a tried and true way of people becoming goblins. It's like, oh, we found you, we found Norman's gear. But yeah, that's what happened. He became the heroic Green Goblin, and then sort of disappeared after his equipment was destroyed. So he ended up, just quitting, and he was on the shelf as a character for years and years. And then they reintroduced him as the villainous Hobgoblin. I love that character change. I think no one was too sort of emotionally invested in him that they really minded that he went villainous. And it just made for a really fun, interesting character. I love those characters who are kind of like Starscream, like kind of underpowered, but also incredibly ambitious. And I think he was killed off in the Go Down Swinging storyline by Norman Osborn. I really hope they can either sort of resurrect him, or you didn't quite see him get decapitated. There was like a silhouette, so maybe he survived. Who knows? And finally, we skip a little bit further ahead and we get into the Spider-Verse. So one of my favorite Spider-Verse creations, straight out of the pages of Evangelion or a similar robo-anime. We have Spider, or SPDR, the Build-A-Figure, which, I lament the lack of articulation in the shoulders. That's kind of a shame, but it's still a great figure. And who's this? It's a Stepford Cuckoo? No. It's, yes, it is a Stepford Cuckoo, but for the instances of this display, it's Penny Parker. And I think this works. I love pairing up figures to make like a double figure, so to speak. So this is my stand-in Penny Parker, who scales, I think, perfectly. I think she scales really great to the SPDR figure. If I had more customizing skills, I could make her more quintessentially Penny Parker. I could at least like coloring the eyes, but I don't really think I need to, because I like the idea that this sort of pink glow, it looks like she's sort of psychically interfacing with the SPDR. So that's pretty cool. I really like that. And that, folks, is my 2000s and 2010s little lineup. And to finish, we go down to what I consider kind of a work in progress shelf right here. Ooh, I had to get down low. Sorry for making you sick with all this jumbling about. So we have finally the last shelf. Actually, I'll tell you what, I'm going to see if I can pop a little squat here. Hope you don't get motion sick. So yes, here we are. The final shelf, which encompasses the remainder of Spider-Verse and really tries to bring us up to date here as best we can. So hot off the tails of Superior Spider-Man, we have Superior Octopus, which is a figure I never really thought we were going to see. I mean, he really only lasted for a mini-series and a couple of appearances in All New, All Different Spider-Man, but I'm glad we got him, because the figure just is awesome. Like, he rocks. He really does look terrific. I love the bright, clean paint job. The green, again, luminous green. Gotta love luminous green, you know? Those two figures look so good next to each other. Yeah, so I love him. He's terrific. But we still need a decent Superior Spider-Man. Come on, Hasbro, give us one of those. Now, going down, we got Gwen Stacy, Ghost Spider, as she's going by now. I'm not a fan of this figure. The Gwen head, the maskless head, does not look good. And there's just not too much going on with this. I think she could do with some extra hands, and yeah, it's okay. It fills this gap, but that's about it. Similar, Peter Porker. If you see my top 5 worst figures, well, you know my feelings about this guy. Now this is an interesting one. This is a bit of a kit bash. This is the modern Scarlet Spider, the one from the awful Peter David run that we had. So the beat up Peter Parker head actually works for the story very well. He's got the degeneration going on there. There's a bit where he gets tooled up with a bunch of guns, so the chameleon gun works kind of well for him. So I just bashed him together just for the sake of using the other Scarlet Spider figure that I have, but it just reminds me of a terrible storyline. Here we've got the Spider-Man PS4 Velocity suit, which is one that I think like no one asked for, to be honest, but it's fun. You know, it's a fun design, so I'm not mad about it. I probably would have only got him because of the Hobgoblin Bath, but it's actually he's winning me over. And we have again more Spider-Verse. Mayday Parker, who, you know, makes more sense being in the second iteration of Spider-Verse, since she featured a lot more in that second storyline. Then we have Spider UK. I don't know if he had the beard in the comics, but I really like the head sculpt that came with, it's Captain Universe. Yes, that's it, Captain Universe. So I wanted to use that, so otherwise he would have just had a boring Spider-Man mask. So I think that works pretty well there. Again, if you've seen the top 5 best video, you know my feelings about Spider-Man Noir. Big fan of this guy. Just looks cool. He looks naked without the fedora. It's like, you know, a guy looks more naked if he's naked wearing socks than if he's just naked. That's how this guy looks. It's like he's fully clothed, but he looks naked because of the absence of the fedora. I hope that made sense. Or it just made me sound weird. It's Spider-Man PS4. This is a funny one. I really, the design with the white spider, it took a long time, but it really started to grow on me as I played the game. And I love the figure, but at the same time, he doesn't stand well. He's difficult to pose. Like the joints move in funny ways, and just he's not articulated like a Spider-Man should be. He's articulated more like a man should be, which doesn't lend itself to interesting poses. Spider-Punk. Who doesn't love Spider-Punk? Great figure. Again, one of my top 5 Spider-Verse figures. And again, speaking of Spider-Verse, we have Ashley Barton here
which is, again, a pretty bog standard basic figure. It's fine. She's kind of she's a completionist figure. I don't really care too much for it, but she's quite unique at least, so I dig that. And finally, to round things out storyline-wise, of course, we have the Red Goblin. Go down swinging. So Red Goblin, I bought an extra Hobgoblin glider because that works really well for him, and it's stupid that he didn't come with one, Hasbro. And this figure, I kind of felt a love-hate because I love the character of the Red Goblin. I thought it was a really fun idea to do, but I just feel like the mask design looks really cool. I feel it looks like one of those kind of Japanese Oni type masks, so that's pretty cool. But the white above the eyes, it just looks like he's got big bushy Father Christmas eyebrows, so it's kind of a shame. But then to round out the Go Down Swinging story, we have the beautiful, beautiful Flash Thompson anti-Venom. I did another deep dive retrospective on this figure several videos ago, so I recommend you go back and take a little look at that. And finally, not ending on the most exciting figure, we have the newer iteration of Symbiote Spider-Man. Again, from Going Down Swinging. I'm sure that's what the storyline is called. I hope it was called that, otherwise I'm saying it for no particular reason. But yeah, I kind of like this figure. Again, it's one that no one really asked for. He appeared for like one issue, maybe two, but it's a fun design. It's a bit of a shelf filler. It's Hasbro being Hasbro going, what can we repaint? But again, he will do at a push. And folks, that's it. Again, I've been rabbiting off nearly half an hour. That's crazy. But yeah, let's go from the top. We got the early 2000s, represented by House of M Spider-Man. We got the 2010s, 20-teens, represented by Big Time and a couple of guys on the floor. And finally, we've got the most modern era, represented, represented by PS4 Spider-Man. And there we have it, guys. Thanks for watching. And this is only part 2. There's actually more of the collection. This encompasses the Spider-Man Essentials, but we still have X-Men and the wider Marvel Universe, so stay tuned. Like, share, and subscribe. Follow me on Instagram now. I got the Instagrams going on. And I'm slowly creeping towards 200 subscribers, so, oof. Yeah, special shout out to whoever it is that might end up being my 200th subscriber. In the meantime, guys, keep being Marvelous Legends, and I'll see you all soon.